Summer can be a bit of a slog. For us, it's often for some reason a rather busy time, and I'm sure we're not alone.
Well, you can beat the summertime sadness and the August angst and enhance your everyday with our excellent sponsor, Via Hemp. This is a company that crafts award-winning premium THC and THC-free gummies.
Each of these gummies is especially designed to cultivate a specific mood. Whether you're looking to get relaxed, get quality sleep, get creative, or just to get focused. If you're 21 or older, you can experience it for yourself and get 15% off your first order with our exclusive code MSheet at viahemp.com. That's VIIAHEMP.com.
I personally enjoyed their grapefruit flow state gummies. This CBG and CBD powerhouse really helped me tap into my productivity. Like, we have had an extremely busy summer, and I feel flow state got me over the finish line a few times when I was editing multiple episodes a day, digging through documents, and knocking out a bunch of interviews.
Via Hemp does not require a medical card, and it ships legally to all 50 states. It's also affordable, and even more so for Murder Sheet listeners who get a special deal.
If you're 21 and older, head to viahemp.com and use code MSheet to receive 15% off. That's VIIAHEMP.com and use code MSheet at checkout. After you purchase, they ask you where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them we sent you. Enhance your everyday with Via.
Temp check. What kind of summer are we having this year? A family road trip summer? A beach bum summer? Or a wake me up when the sun sets summer? With Instacart, choose your own adventure and skip the shopping side quests. Where available, you can get ice cream delivered to your hotel, sunscreen to the pool, or cold brew to your bed. Well, door, in as fast as 30 minutes. Wherever you find yourself this summer, you can get the goods. Download Instacart for free delivery on your first 3 orders. Offer valid for a limited time. Minimum $10 per order. Excludes restaurants. Additional terms and fees apply.
Have you ever covered a carpet stain with a rug, ignored a leaky faucet, pretended your half-painted living room is supposed to look like that? Well, you're not alone. We've all got unfinished home projects. But there's an easier way. Thumbtack is the app that makes it easier to care for your home. Pull out your phone and in just a few taps, search, chat, and book highly rated pros right in your neighborhood. Download Thumbtack and start caring for your home the easier way.
Content warning, this episode includes discussion of the murder of 2 children.
Today on the Murder Sheet, we are going to be discussing some new filings that have come down in the Delphi case. And this is all in the run-up, of course, to the hearings that are going to occur on Monday, one of which is a contempt hearing. These focus on the contempt hearing. And I guess we're going to talk about maybe what to expect and these latest filings. My name is Anya Kane. I'm a journalist.
And I'm Kevin Greenlee. I'm an attorney.
And this is The Murder Sheet.
We're a true crime podcast focused on original reporting, interviews, and deep dives into murder cases. We're The Murder Sheet.
And this is The Delphi Murders. More defense filings.
I think it's actually difficult to try to discuss what to expect because who knows?
Yeah.
For one thing, the defense has filed a lot of motions indicating they want to call witnesses to discuss the behavior or the alleged behavior of prosecutor Nick McClelland, especially as it relates to prosecutor McClelland's purported communication with YouTubers such as Gary Bodette. They've indicated that they also want to hint that there might be some sort of source who works for the judge or with the judge who might have been leaking information. And while all of that is interesting, it is not clear if it would even be allowed in the hearing, because the hearing is actually supposed to be about the behavior of the defense attorneys.
Which, frankly, for the most part, although they do get into it somewhat in today's filings, has not really been discussed by them that much or explained. And that's kind of interesting in and of itself. I think one thing that's clear to me is that by bringing in YouTubers and online figures to discuss some of this, it makes it kind of adds to the circus atmosphere of this whole situation, bringing in non-credible people. Like if you bring, YouTuber number 5 in to say, he knows for a fact because the aliens told him that Nick McClelland is talking to, other YouTubers. I mean, how is that relevant, and how can anybody trust any of these people? I mean, like they're so eager to put these people on the stand, and these people are so eager to comply. It's like there's something very gross and off-putting about their strategy going into this. And I think, frankly, I see this as potentially, if they're allowed to bring in some of these sources, it's potentially a turning point as far as the defense's credibility.
And along those lines, let's note that one of the recent filings is a list of additional witness. I will read this. Comes now counsel for defense counsel and notifies the state and the court that he intends to call Richard Snay during the contempt hearing. Counsel first learned of the substance and importance of Mr. Snay's testimony on March 14th, 2024, when he returned to call as requested in a voicemail. Notice is being given the same day, and that's signed by David Hennessy. Now, I'm not sure what Richard Snay intends to testify to. Richard Snay certainly told a variety of different stories about his involvement in the leak affair, which is at the center of the contempt hearings. Someone did send us a clip from an episode of his YouTube show where Mr. Snay said, some people think Murder Sheet played me. Let's see what Kevin and Anya say, or have Kevin and Anya ask me about that after Monday. That suggests the possibility that he intends in his testimony to somehow attack us. I'd certainly like to make the obvious point that we never, under any circumstances, discuss sourcing with Mr. Snay. I know he's tried to put out some sort of utterly bizarre and frankly ridiculous conspiracy theory where we were somehow involved with a plot to leak pictures to him so that he would share them. For the record, that's a stupid idea. It's a stupid plot, but for the record, I categorically deny that. It's an odd situation for us to be in because we never wanted to be a part of the story. All that happened is what we told you. We got leaked graphic crime scene pictures. We notified the prosecution. We contacted the defense. And we cooperated, as I would hope any good citizen would do. And because of that, certain people in the YouTube community and the Reddit community who align themselves with the defense have been attacking us and accusing us of being a part of the leak, of organizing the leak. And I would certainly hope that the defense team doesn't put anyone on the stand who is going to
perjure themselves
and make
or do unhinged hearsay
and make baseless accusations. Because obviously, if it comes to that, we would vigorously defend ourselves.
Yes, quite vigorously and quite ably, I would say. And I would say this. Maybe a month ago, if you told me, hey, do you think the defense is going to defend themselves on the contempt charges by bringing in a bunch of lawyers who can talk about what contempt is? Or do you think they're going to bring in a bunch of YouTubers who are going to, scream and cry and throw up and make themselves look like idiots? I would say the first option, because that makes sense. But I don't really necessarily, just the way things have been going with some of these filings, some of that confidence that I had in like the level of defense we're going to be getting here has declined. We are both of the strong belief that credibility is something that is very difficult to claw back once you've lost it. That once you are, essentially famous for telling lies on the internet, spreading around rumors and conspiracy theories, being wrong constantly, and
putting ridiculous witnesses on the stand,
attacking others, and in the case of the defense, putting ridiculous witnesses on the stand. I mean, I can't emphasize enough how better off you would be not going, if Hennessy went door to door in Indianapolis and asked random people what they thought about this and then put them on the stand. You would be better off with that, because even though they're not informed, they've not outed themselves as bad actors, unlike everybody else aside from Matt Hoffman that they're calling. Matt Hoffman has a reason to be there. Matt Hoffman is a defense investigator. He may have something legitimate to say. Everybody else, I mean, it's a circus. They're bringing in the clowns, and frankly, the whole thing leaves a very bad taste in the mouth. And I don't think I'm alone in saying that at this point. And it's a shame, because I thought some of Hennessy's early filings were, made sense as far as strategy and, seemed like a good way to tackle this. But obviously, this is the defense team that I think it ties into their overall strategy. But I kind of feel like, again, Monday could be a turning point as far as how they're received. I don't think it benefits their client to play to the YouTube audience, which is comparatively very small compared to the wider world. You could win on YouTube and alienate everybody else who is a reasonable person. And it's really, when I say YouTube, it's a corner of YouTube. It's not even all of YouTube. But it's like, but those people, the pro-defense YouTubers, are virulently pro-defense, so I think there's like an ego boost in having people who really have your back. But the cost is that everybody else is standing there feeling like, what the heck is going on?
And one thing that's interesting, as we mentioned the other day, it's pretty easy to determine who on YouTube is most closely aligned with the defense, because they got advanced looks at one of Hennessy's motions this week. So just look and see who covered it the day before it appeared on my case, and those are some of the voices that they are most assiduously courting.
I mean, which is stupid, because they're courting the converted. They're evangelizing to the converted. There's no new ad there. And in addition, it is just, I can't emphasize how dumb it is to leak something that is going to go up the following morning. Like, there's no benefit. You're trying to set a narrative, but these people have limited reach. They've already outed themselves in most cases to be, again, pro one side to the point of being untrustworthy. And again, like, there's no utility. Like, there's just...
Well, the only utility is that it outs the people who have some sort of relationship with David Hennessy and the defense.
That's not utility for the defense. That just makes them look foolish.
Well, it's utility for the rest of us.
It's a utility for the rest of it. I mean, it's just, again, it's clown town. I'm sorry. Like, it's shocking. And frankly, it's getting to the point where, there's like serious criticisms to be made of the prosecution or law enforcement or the judge. But when you're basically like, hold my beer, like, let me outdo all of that, you're distracting from criticism that you could be making of the other side.
So focusing on some of the other motions made concerning specifically the contempt hearing now scheduled for Monday, March 18th. As we mentioned, there were some motions filed to continue it or even wait until after the trial. Surely it won't come as a shock to anyone that prosecutor Nick McClelland formally filed an objection to all of that. He doesn't want to wait. He wants to have it done and over with on Monday.
I'm honestly surprised that the defense doesn't want that at this point, too. I mean, having an opportunity to vigorously defend themselves from the charges and then moving on. It just like there's a strategy of delay going on that I don't understand, because they've had months to brace for this. Because since they've come back, given that Hennessy himself suggested that contempt would be a reasonable outcome of all of this, I would think that they would at least be thinking about how are we going to defend ourselves from that.
Yeah, and also you'd think they would be tired of having an ongoing topic of conversation be their alleged and purported misbehavior. You would think they would want to turn the page, close that chapter. Let's have this conversation. Let's get it settled. Let's move on. As long as it's an open book, as long as it's still going to be discussed and argued about in court and such, I don't see how that helps them to have constant reminders of what happened.
Also, I mean, just from a practical standpoint, I believe they can appeal. So if they've made it clear that they feel Judge Gull is biased against them and blah, blah, blah. Now, the Indiana Supreme Court seems to have disagreed and essentially said that nothing she did was biased. It was in the interest of the case. They just feel she did the wrong thing, so they put the attorneys back on. So as far as the highest court in Indiana is concerned, she gets kind of a blank check, prior to to them being reinstated. So I think, like, if they're really feeling, oh no, we're not going to get a fair shot with her, do it and then appeal it, right? I mean, like get it over with. I mean, all the delays, what are they afraid of? I don't understand, unless there's stuff that's not out there right now that is bad for them. The fear and like consternation from this side over this one hearing where, as far as we've heard, the only consequences might be financial, or like maybe they get some sort of like, you guys need to be viewing certain sensitive documents while supervised by, like some sort of court staff. I mean, I don't really see, it's not an existential threat like being kicked off is. So I don't know why. And again, you have the option, I imagine, to appeal whatever Judge Gull's decision is. That would delay things more, sure. But to me, it's like, I don't understand the reaction to this. And I don't understand why you wouldn't just have a bunch of respected, smart attorneys who know what they're talking about, who may have been in similar situations, or at the very least can speak to what contempt is and what it isn't, get up there and say that this is not contempt. That carries a lot of weight with me.
Okay, it's time to commit. 2024 is the year for prioritizing yourself. Begin your new smile journey with Byte, and you could start seeing results in just 2 to 3 weeks. Just order your at-home impression kit today for only $14.95 at Byte.com. Byte Clear aligners are doctor-directed and delivered to your door. Treatment costs thousands less than braces. Plus, they offer financing options, accept eligible insurance, and you can pay with your HSA FSA. Get 80% off your impression kit when you use code WONDERY at Byte.com. That's BYTE.com. Start your confidence journey today with Byte.
This episode is sponsored by AutoTrader. Credit scores, down payments, interest rates. Car buying can be a numbers game, but you don't have to be a math expert to get the keys to your dream car. Just use Kelley Blue Book My Wallet on AutoTrader. Crunch your numbers and get your personalized results so you know exactly how much you'll pay each month for your car. It's like having a magic wand for your wallet. Presto! The car you've been wanting is now within reach. So hit the road and leave your calculator at home. Find your next car on autotrader.com.
What makes a life a good one? Is it the adventure you have? Or the friends you find along the way? Maybe it's pursuing your passion while striving to protect, defend, and save what you believe in every single day. So, what makes a life a good one? In the Coast Guard, we think it's all of the above and more, but you'll have to find out for yourself. Visit gocoastguard.com to learn more.
So let's move on to another filing from this morning. David Hennessy filed a memorandum concerning contempt proceedings, and he's basically giving It's all a preview of some of the arguments he's going to make on some of the different points. For instance, it's been argued that the fact that Baldwin and Rosie issued a press release was a violation of the gag order and therefore indicated contempt. But here is what Attorney Hennessy has to say about that. He writes that the gag order was issued on December 22nd, 2022, and states explicitly that it was issued in response to the defense press release from December 1, 2022. Thus, the press release could not have violated an order issued the next day. What do you think of that argument?
I think that's a fair argument. In previous prosecution filings, it came out that the defense, prosecution, and the judge had a conversation prior to this where they all agreed that they were not going to try it in the press and going to avoid doing things like this. So essentially they pulled one over on the judge potentially, but if they're not violating the official gag order that came down, that might be something that would certainly undermine trust, but that's not a violation of a gag order. If the gag order doesn't exist when you're allegedly violating it, I don't see how you can be penalized for that.
The next issue of import is that of accidentally misdirected email. This, of course, refers to the fact that at some point relatively early on in his representation of Richard Allen, attorney Andrew Baldwin is said to have accidentally forwarded some information to Brandon Woodhouse that he intended to send to Brad Rosie. I believe what was forwarded was a list or an index they had begun to prepare of some discovery materials. What does Hennessy have to say about that?
Hennessy talks about how this could happen to anybody with email. This is something that's common. And he says that they fully explained what happened and that they didn't mean it on purpose. It's interesting to me that he keeps on, he refers it to Baldwin and Rosie, given that it came out in the chambers meeting between all of the attorneys when they initially withdrew, that Rosie apparently didn't even know about this. So I don't know. I think it's bizarre not to tell your co-counsel that something like that happened.
That actually kind of brings us to the next point in the memo, which is headlined Candor Towards the Tribunal. In other words, did Andrew Baldwin have a duty as soon as he accidentally sent this email to Brandon Woodhouse to notify the judge? What does Hennessy say about that?
He basically says he didn't have the obligation to be honest about what happened as long as he wasn't actively lying. He's arguing that it would have been wrong for Baldwin to get out there and say, I didn't send any emails today to anybody that I shouldn't have, apropos of nothing, but that that would be wrong. But if he just didn't say anything, then he's not lying. Okay.
So is a layperson, I have to admit, is an attorney, that sort of makes sense to me. As a layperson, you're laughing.
I've gotten used to the attorney's way of thinking, so I think I understand it. But I think to most people, it's like, I'm not lying because I didn't actively lie, but I just omitted something. But I mean, again, it's all about what the lawyers think. It's all about what the judge thinks. It's all about what the legal system is. So you have to go with that, even if it sounds foreign to lay people.
Yeah, and again, as we alluded to earlier, some of these arguments that he's making, they may not be slam dunk arguments, but at the very least, they are plausible arguments.
Most of this stuff, in my opinion, is fine. And even well thought out. Like, that's why I don't understand the other stuff, because it's like you have some perfectly good arguments here. It's like I'm making a nice sandwich and then I, dump a bunch of old, garbage, old relish I find in the fridge on it. It's like I just wrecked a decent sandwich. For what? I guess maybe to give some of my biggest fans a thrill. I mean, like, is that it? I mean, and that's not a good reason. That's not, like, I can't emphasize enough how disturbing I find the defense's continuous courting of conspiracy theorists. They've cited YouTubers. They've leaked to YouTubers. It's interesting that oftentimes on YouTube, you see like the same talking points come up again and again. And maybe that's people being hacks who can't, conjure up an original thought in their lives, or maybe there's some, I mean, I don't know. It's just, it's bizarre to see, and it doesn't benefit them in the long term because these people have very little influence in the wider community. So I don't get, if it was a strategy that I thought was morally reprehensible, but there was like some real utility to it, at least I'd like respect it.
See, the issue is we don't know what we don't know. So we don't know if there's going to be something shocking coming out at the hearing that perhaps they know about that we don't. But based upon what we do know, there are plausible and strong arguments to be made that perhaps this is not contempt, and perhaps they should not be found in contempt. And so it is confusing as to why they don't focus on that instead of this other material.
It seems like they have some good arguments in that department. It seems like they have some really talented lawyers who can come in and speak to that. And to me, that's all great, strong lawyering. But when you're, adding to that just people who have no credibility, who have no business being there, who treat this like it's a wrestling match, who have lied repeatedly, deceived their audiences and each other repeatedly online, that really takes away from some of this. And like, it's just embarrassing. Again, like, I mean, talk about inserting themselves into this case. I mean, it's about egos with some of these YouTubers and like inviting them in. The one time we filed into the case, it was to get documents released. Like, that's all we care about. Let's have more transparency. In the case of, this leak, we did not want to be involved in this, but we felt we had to do the right thing by coming forward. And, turns out afterwards, bunch of friggin' YouTubers had this stuff days earlier, said nothing.
We're talking about the leak. Let's discuss how Attorney Hennessy covers it in this memo. He says the leak complained of cannot be laid at the feet of defense counsel. It is beyond cavil that they did not provide any part of discovery by photographs or otherwise to anyone outside the defense team. That might be an issue at the hearing, because I believe there were some hints in some motions that perhaps the Franks memorandum, which may or may not have included some of these crime scene photographs, may have been shared with Ms. Westerman. So I think that is an issue that will probably be discussed at the hearing. And then Mr. Hennessy goes on to note, it is impossible to tell exactly what information on the internet came from where.
That's not true.
Yes. But I think that goes to the heart of what their strategy has been with some of these YouTubers and other things.
Who's to say who has what when?
They're just like, there's lots of leaks. Who knows where they come from? And then he has a page on here where they repeat a lot of material about Mr. Baudet, who used to be known as Fig Solves, indicating that he had some leaks from somebody working for the judge, and that he even gives some specific examples where Mr. Baudet seemed to have some information about the bullet, which he was sharing publicly before the PCA came out. That was a pretty closely held secret. So he's essentially saying, how could he have known this unless he had the sources he claimed he had? And one of the sources he claimed he had was somebody who worked with the judge. So maybe everybody's leaking. He also makes the claim that Barbara McDonald had a stick drawing, a photograph of the tree, and Professor Turco's report that could not have come from or be connected to the defense. I have to admit, I'm not following a lot of Miss McDonald's work. This is the first I've heard that she's had a copy of the Turco report. So maybe that's something that will be elaborated upon. Do you have any thoughts on any of the things I've just mentioned?
I mean, it's kind of like, I don't know, at this point, just with Hennessy's strategy on all of this, some of it that I might be taking pretty seriously in normal circumstances, I'm kind of like, well, I guess that's the Hennessy interpretation. Let's see what happens in court. Let's see how it comes down in court. I'm not really prepared to necessarily again, I'm not aware of Barbara McDonald publishing the Turco report. I guess if she did, then sorry, but I don't So I have to ask, did she email the defense and say, I have the Turco report? is it just like her reporting is so spot on that she must have the Turco report? I don't know. Like, I don't know, because this is basically thrown out in a sentence and then, moved on from. It's very hard to analyze the validity of these claims. Also, with Professor Turco's report, is this something that he did recently? Is this something that he did in 2017? If, let's say, I'm not saying this happened, but if Turco gave her his report back early on before Richard Allen even came up on the radar, is that necessarily as catastrophic a leak as if like a police official a few weeks ago gave it to her? I mean, like, do you know what I'm saying? Like, there's different levels. And to me, if it's a scenario on par with a recent leak from a police official, that's a problem. That's absolutely a problem. If it's what I described initially, like a civilian passed it on to her early on and she's never reported on it in full, then I don't know. That sort of seems like an apples and oranges comparison. That seems like that does not rise to the level of a former employee and close friend of one of the defense attorneys putting out what he put out. Those discovery materials, those incredibly graphic images that are incendiary in nature. And
obviously he keeps on referring to them as discovery materials because that's a neutral way of describing them. They are graphic crime scene photos of the murder of 2 children.
I don't know. Like, some of this, like, well, isn't everyone doing it? Like, I'm not really seeing a lot of evidence for that. With the Gary Baudet stuff, I don't know. Like, there's just, again, given our dealings with him, if he, for somebody who may have, is saying that he had sources, he got a lot wrong. I'm just.
But in fairness to Mr. Hennessy is pointing out an opportunity when Hennessy is pointing out an occasion where Mr. Baudet got something right. He knew about the bullet before that information was public.
To me, that's the strongest point in the kind of counter leak scenario. But unless we can point to Baudet specifically receiving that information from somebody who's covered by the gag order, I don't know how much he can do with that. And again, given that this hearing is a contempt hearing for the defense attorneys, vaguely flinging mud that we don't know the source of just feels like desperation.
I guess arguments have to go both ways. Let's assume, for the sake of argument, that Mr. Baudet did indeed receive information about the bullet from a court employee. If that was the case, it appears he would have received that information prior to the release of the gag order. And Mr. Hennessy is arguing that basically anything from before the gag order doesn't count. So if that's the standard that we use when we discuss the behavior of attorneys Baldwin and Rosie, perhaps we should use a similar standard when it comes to the behavior of Mr. Baudet's alleged source. And to be clear, I have no idea who Mr. Baudet's alleged court source is.
I'm not personally convinced that he'd had one. That's just me. I don't know. If it turns out that it was someone in an official capacity who was leaking to him, obviously that becomes a significantly more serious situation, in my opinion.
Is there anything else you wanted to say about any of this? This is a question we often ask at the end of interviews. I don't know why I'm asking you, but I'm asking you. Is there anything else you want to say about any of this, Ms. Kane, or have we covered everything sufficiently?
I think we've covered it pretty sufficiently. I feel like if you're hearing exasperation from me about any of this, it's just because I'm seeing legal strategy that strikes me as solid, good, compelling, being overshadowed by legal strategy that just seems incredibly stupid and short-sighted.
Yeah, because there's ways plausibly they could win this.
I think that if Judge Gull doesn't allow them to have their YouTube, little YouTube junior detectives running around, I think that she would be doing them a massive favor. I think she would be doing them a massive favor from an optics point of view, a PR point of view, and a legal point of view. because having a bunch of people get up there and lie or, certainly perjure themselves, but also just engage in hearsay and that's just my opinion.
So with all of that said, it is my earnest hope that you will not have a new episode from us until after court on Monday, because the only way you'd get a new episode from us prior to that would be if something really big happens, if there's another big filing or something of that nature. Hopefully that won't happen. Hopefully this is the end of the filings until the court hearing. And if that is the case, I hope you all have a wonderful weekend, and I look forward to talking with you again on Monday. Thank you. Thanks so much for listening to The Murder Sheet. If you have a tip concerning one of the cases we cover, please email us at murdersheet@gmail.com. If you have actionable information about an unsolved crime, please report it to the appropriate authorities.
If you're interested in joining our Patreon, that's available at www.patreon.com/murdersheet. If you want to tip us a bit of money for records requests, you can do so at www.buymeacoffee.com/murdersheet. We very much appreciate any support.
Special thanks to Kevin Tyler Greenlee, who composed the music for The Murder Sheet, and who you can find on the web at kevintg.com.
If you're looking to talk with other listeners about a case we've covered, you can join the Murder Sheet discussion group on Facebook. We mostly focus our time on research and reporting, so we're not on social media much. We do try to check our email account, but we ask for patience as we often receive a lot of messages. Thanks again for listening.